searching for someone who understands the pain that you've been through. With the doors are locked, the lights are on. What are you waiting for? Come on in, welcome home. You are loved, you belong here now. No matter where you've been, just come on in. Oh, you'll find a place of rest in the arms of spirit. God has waited so long for your homecoming day. God knows the peace you see, He'll hurt your feelings. Spirit wants to hold you and to wipe your tears away. Well, the Father waits with open arms. God is calling out your name. Come on in, welcome home. You are loved, you belong here now. No matter where you've been, just come on in. Well, there's room in the house of love for someone just like you. Come on in, welcome home. You are loved, you belong here now. No matter where you've been. Come on in, welcome home. You are loved, you belong here now. No matter where you've been, just come on in. Yeah, come on in, welcome home. You are loved, you belong here now. No matter where you've been, come on in, welcome home. You are loved, you belong here now. No matter where you've been, just come on in.
Good morning, everybody. So good to see you this morning. They started without me, and so I didn't make my way back to meet all of you. So nice to have you here today. I'm Bev Spivey. I co-minister here with my husband, Reverend Lawrence Palmer, and we love seeing you every week. We also want to welcome our live streamers who have tuned in on our website, unitypompanobeach.org. Hello. And Harold, we have a slide to show them. Do you recognize Catherine? Second one over. She's growing and growing and growing. Catherine and that group with others from Unity of Delray. The man in the middle is DJ, the sponsor from Delray Unity, who's driving them. They're stopping in Stewart. They did stop in Stewart for another group of Unity kids, and they are enjoying a regional retreat with many other kids from churches in our region in St. Simon's Island, I believe, Georgia. So they had a long trek. Biggest thanks to all of you who keep in prayer and thought the idea of ministering to our kids with new thought, modern religious teachings that are spiritual in nature that will serve them well their whole lifetime. So Catherine says thanks to her anonymous donor who provided her registration for this, and thanks to each and every one of you as we really love our kids. And few though they may be, it's important that they have these retreats. So it's also important that we have our wonderful musicians once again, led by James McCoy.
Good morning. We have Mr. John Rose at the piano with us once again this morning. Mr. Jeff Renz at the drum set. And you remember our featured soloist, Miss Karina Iglesias. And this morning, I have to say, is rather auspicious for me because this is the first time in any Unity service here at Pompano that we're actually going to be performing two pieces that I wrote. So that's rather auspicious for me, I have to say. Yeah. The meditation song that we've been singing all month, and then also the song that Libby Lay and I, if you know Libby, that she and I co-wrote for Bev for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So that's what you're going to hear today.
Thank you, James. We look forward to it. So as we begin today, we remind you that if you've been coming for a while, you've heard this constantly. This is our year to embed in our thoughts that we are one humanity, and we each have a story, and our paths have brought us here together, and we enjoy accepting and knowing each other for who we are and where we are today. So one humanity, many stories. And this month, our theme is on finding comfort. October is Comfort Month, so won't you join me in this affirmation? The Christ's presence is my guide, my strength, and my comfort. And we have a vision here. Together, centered in God, we create an ever-expanding spiritual community of one. And our mission statement: we are a spiritual beacon of inspiration, abundance, and enlightenment. So let us pray together this morning as we close our eyes and just center into our heart space, allowing our thoughts to just float on by as we practice just being here now in this moment. As we realize we do have a light, each and every one of us, and it is shining. And we focus on that light within each and every person. And we sit here today ready to open our hearts, ready to open our minds, to share, to absorb, and just to be in spiritual community. And so it is. Amen. So let's stand and sing together.
All right, so we need your help this morning. You ready? A little reggae in the morning is always a good thing.
We are the ones that we've been waiting for. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. We are the mothers, breathe with the Mother Earth. We are the fathers, blessed with a gentle strength. Sister and brother, respected hand in hand. Sons and daughters who walk upon this sacred land. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. We are the healers who hear the voice of truth. We are the elders whose wisdom guides our youth. Searchers and seekers with wings spreading to the sun. The shapers and the builders whose work for peace is never done. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. The singers of great beauty, the keepers of the faith. We are the dreamers, resting in God's grace. The dancers and the lovers who move beneath the stars. The masters and the teachers whose wisdom reminds us who we are. Said we are the ones that we've been waiting for. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. the ones that we've been waiting for. We are the ones, we are the ones that we've been waiting for.
Did you like that? That was a new one for us. So if you're here for the first time, we don't want to scare you, but we've been waiting for you. No pressure at all. We want you to feel very welcome here. We are a spiritual community, and we really love to have people come and be with us, whether on vacation or checking us out or whatever. So we welcome you here today. If it is your first time with us, would you raise your hand? We want to be sure to give you a brochure that tells you about Unity. You can also read about us online at unitypompanobeach.org, where we have all our announcements and things going on as well. Our ambassadors are passing out those brochures, and there's a table at the back of Fellowship Hall where if you have any kind of questions about this community here or Unity movement or anything else that we might be able to answer, stop by there and introduce yourself and ask your questions. So everybody's welcome to come to fellowship time afterwards in the next building, where we have snacks and just enjoy socializing with each other. Prayer is very important here, and we have prayer chaplains who are dedicated to praying daily on our prayer requests and for the entire community. At a half hour before every service at 10:30, there's a prayer chapel where a chaplain is stationed to sit there quietly and pray with you, or pray with you if you like. So that's at 10:30 on Sunday mornings. Following the service, the chaplains will stand in the aisles and invite you to take a brief moment to pray with them. If you're not familiar with how Unity prays, it's a style called affirmative or positive prayer. So just think of something to pray about. You don't need to be in crisis, and sit with the chaplain for a little bit. It's a good way to start the week. Well, we have quite a few things going on. This week is improv night with Daniel Shimmick right over in Fellowship Hall at 7 o'clock. He is wonderful, a lot of fun and creativity worked into a fun evening of laughter and improv. So come out for that. It's $10 at the door for an evening of fun with Daniel. Next, we have next Sunday a Meet the Ministries. Now that's the current word for committees. Those of you who have been in other organizations, we went through committees and then teams, but now they're ministries, and we have 12 of them. Unity of Pompano is really run by a lot of volunteers. All of our members commit to some form of volunteer service, and that service usually involves one time a month. So everything from fellowship time to greeting time to many other projects around. Each ministry will have a table and information and food for you next Sunday. So after the service, mingle around in Fellowship Hall so that you can get an understanding of how many different things we have here for you. Because even if it may not appeal to you or apply to you, you will be able to be knowledgeable and tell others. So that's next Sunday. We also have a new 8-week class starting on creating self-healing. Some of you may know Kristen Berth, and she does yoga, qigong, tai chi, breath work, all of these things. There is a schedule on the table in the lobby with what is going to happen on what particular night. So this starts October 29th. It's on Tuesday nights for 8 weeks in Fellowship Hall. It's $12 a class, and please come to one or however many you can. If you can come to all of them, that would be great too. There's much more information about this in the lobby. We also have Dr. Dream returning. He is here with 111 Tibetan bowls on Friday night, November 1st, starting at 7 o'clock. We invite you to go to our website, unitypompanobeach.org. See, that's the third time I've said it. That really isn't a tool I learned, that just kind of happens because I talk as I go. Okay, unitypompanobeach.org, where you have a link to get your ticket for Dr. Dream. We're also open to people volunteering that night and serving as his angels as he distributes various forms of chocolate and aromatherapy oils to whoever's here. We had a big turnout last time. We hope we have that again. It's a wonderful evening, a meditative and healing experience. So get your tickets for Dr. Dream. Other tickets that we would like you to go ahead and book your time for our family fun picnic. This is for all of your family and friends to come as well to a picnic on Saturday, November 2nd at Tradewinds, just north of here by Butterfly World. Tradewinds Park, we will have the pavilion all day. This is sponsored by our neighborhood transportation with Phil DeRocher. And your ticket price even includes the park admission, which is charged on a weekend. So the food, this time it's a picnic you don't have to bring anything to. So because the food is going to be catered, we ask that you go online and go ahead and get your ticket so the DeRochers know just how many to plan for. We're all looking forward to that day of being together. And so that concludes my announcements. Let's stand and greet each other.
When the music stops, we all sit back down. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Dina Shimmick, and I will be reading the daily word, which is generosity. Divine love through me multiplies all that I give and receive. A classic Unity hymn declares, love is something, if you give it away, you end up having more. While it is true that free sharing my time, talent, and treasure attracts good into my life, I am inspired to give for the sheer joy of giving. Recognizing my oneness with all people in God, I know every thought, word, helping hand, or financial gift I offer blesses me as much as it blesses the one who receives it. Because I know that both giving and receiving are essential to the flow of abundance, I accept with gratitude and love the gifts and blessings that come to me through the loving generosity of others. I count each day as another opportunity for me to give in return. And the scripture comes from Timothy 6:18. They are to do good, to be rich in good works, generous and ready to share.
Right now, as the prayer chest comes forward, we'd like to begin a time of prayer and meditation by singing together, You Know the Truth is You.
When you feel the light and love of God around you, you know the truth is you. As the light of God, the love of God surrounds you, you know the truth is you. Let the power of God, the peace of God inside you become the power, only you. Become the peace, only you. That is you. As the power of the Christ mind connects you, you know the truth is you. Make divine intelligence inside you always guide you to the truth. Let the power of God, the peace of God inside you become the power, only you. Become the peace, only you. That is you. That is you. That is you. That is you.
And now, as we share together in the next few moments of meditation, I invite you to close your eyes and go to your heart space by letting the air in and starting to breathe at a pace that feels comfortable for you. Notice how your breath gives your body permission to fall ever so gracefully in a position that feels right. That your breath also eases your mind, tuning out any distracting thoughts and allowing you to be fully immersed into the next few moments together. Now, as you visualize something that brings you great comfort that you can wrap yourself in, something from the past or the present, a blanket from your childhood, a quilt that has been handed down through your family, perhaps an oversized jacket that you borrowed from a parent or a sibling. If you don't have an object like this in mind, use your power of imagination to conjure up anything that you can wrap yourself in for the next few moments. Breathe into this object and feel how you are protected by it, how you feel safe when it's wrapped around you. Allow this object to bring you warmth. If you feel discomfort, possibly in your own skin or with fleeting thoughts that interrupt your peace, allow this object to form almost like a cocoon to keep you feeling as though you're in that bubble of peace where you can stay connected to spirit. If you have an injury, a pain, possibly you're experiencing a health condition, allow this object to embrace you. Whether you feel comfort with cool or warmth, allow it to penetrate wherever you feel pain and soothe it. If you're feeling any lack of protection, of being heard, of feeling safe and comforted, feel this object wrap around you as though it's the arms of spirit, assuring you that you are never alone, you are always safe, and you are always guided to good. And over the next few moments in silence together, breathe in this feeling of ease and comfort and allow it to be yours and embrace you. And now as we gently come back to the sanctuary, finding our breath still at peace, feeling at ease with who we are, knowing that the divine is always engulfing us in love and protection and safety, we can take a deep breath together and release it. And so it is. Amen.
the storms they pass, the sunlight warms my face. I know that all my joy is a gift of God's grace. Though these trials have ceased, sometimes new clouds will appear. I will not give in to fear. I am steadfast in this prayer.
That's Karina.
Well, as usual, band, great job. My goodness, what a blessing. Thank you so much. As you have seen, the theme for our month is comfort, finding comfort. And I shared with you the first week, 2 weeks ago, about finding comfort in divine order. And last week about finding comfort in oneness. And this week I'd like to share with you about finding comfort in our divine nature. Now, this is important for us to begin to understand on a deep, deep level that our essential, basic nature is divine. Now, before we get into detail about looking at that, let's look at what the world tells you. Let's look at what a human perspective is on who and what you are. You are told that you were sinful when you were born. You were born broken. We all are broken. And we all deserve to spend all of eternity in a fiery hell. Really positive and life-affirming there. And we are told the story, and I'll give the traditional Christians this. If you stay inside the box, it works. If you accept that Jesus came and took all of your sin on him and paid that price and died and resurrected, and if you believe in Jesus, you'll go to heaven and everything will be fine. If you stay inside that box, it works. But if you put one little toe outside that box, it falls apart. Personal experience that happens. So the world tells us something very different, something that doesn't feel quite right for us. And part of the problem with the traditional view of this flawed character or nature that we're supposed to have is that no matter what happens, you never get away from the sin. Even if you accept Jesus, even if you walk the path and do all you're supposed to do, sin's just lurking right around the corner to grab you again. In the Baptist church, it was a big deal about backsliding. Yeah, anybody ever backslid before? Yeah, I know some Baptists have splinters in their rear end. They've backslidden so much. But that's something that you have to deal with constantly. It never goes away. You know, and we laugh about this, but this is a serious thing. There was an old gentleman in my last church down in South Mississippi who was just a pillar of the community, salt of the earth, give you the shirt off his back, do anything in the world for anybody at all. One of the most godly men I ever knew, and I was with him as he was dying. And his last thought as he was dying was the fear that he had committed the unpardonable sin and didn't know it. And what happens if you committed the unpardonable sin? You go to hell. So he died. That despite the life that he lived and his love for God, that was his parting thought leaving this earth. It just broke my heart. That was part of the move that, or the shift in me that moved me toward embracing new thought and metaphysical perspective on life. So the world tells us something very different than what we really know to be true deep within us. It's there. And people even use Scripture. How many of you were had this thrown at you somewhere along the way? To every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly. Don't get haughty. And I know you've heard this one from Proverbs. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. So what that tells you is you need to remain, even regardless of what you do, you still need to remain in that sinful place where you're sinful and you ever can't quite get away from it because it's always there. That reminds me of a story. It's a bad story, but I shouldn't tell it if it's bad. Let's have a vote. How many want to hear it even though it's bad? Sorry, darling, you're overruled. There was this lady came into the minister's office one day for counseling, and she said, "Oh, Reverend, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm so vain. Every time I walk by a mirror, I just look at myself and think how beautiful I am." The minister looked at her and said, "Ma'am, that's not vanity. That's just a mistake." Well, I won't do the other one. So we have this battle going on with self-esteem, with how we look at ourselves, how we feel about ourselves. And when we turn our attention to metaphysical Christianity, to spirituality, if you will, to new thought, to unity in particular, what does unity tell us? Unity says that there is a divine order in this universe that holds everything together. Now, the divine order doesn't direct things. Divine order holds things. Divine order is that quantum field of energy out of which everything comes, in which everything is supported by that divine order. The planets move in the order in which they were placed. There are physical laws that go on this planet that keep us grounded on the earth and give us something dependable. And we can depend on that. We can trust that. We can find comfort in that divine order because it doesn't capriciously change at some unexpected time. It's there. And we also know that if that divine order is there and everything came from that divine order, then we are one with that divine order. There is no duality in reality. There's duality in our perception, which is another sermon altogether. But we are one with that divine order. And today we look at that truth, that and because of that, our true nature, our essential nature is that of spirit. Our essential nature is divine. Now we talk about that. We have that really firmly entrenched in our intellect. All you good metaphysical students and realize that, right? Yeah. That our true nature, our essential nature is divine. We need to get that grasped fully and complete in the very depths of our being so that is the point where we go to first of all. Because we very often go back to that old thing of I'm not what I'm supposed to be. And I had someone say to me one time as I was speaking about something very similar to this, if humankind is so wonderful, then why do you listen to the news? There's murder and rape and theft and genocide and all kinds of things, horrible things going on that these supposedly wonderful beings are doing. Let me give you an illustration of that. Some of you may have heard the name Antonio Stradivari. He was an Italian luthier who lived in the late 1600s, early 1700s, and he made all kinds of stringed instruments, and mostly he was famous for his violins. He made some 1,100 instruments, according to the records that we have, and about 650 of those still exist right now, and about 500 of those are violins and violas. The last sale of a Stradivarius viola brought $45 million. Now, let's take that $45 million instrument and put it in the hands of a 10-year-old boy who's been taking violin lessons for 2 weeks. How's it going to sound? Like a scared cat, right? Yeah. And you're going to think, oh my gosh, that's awful. Look, that violin's not worth anything. Then take that violin and put it in the hands of Itzhak Perlman. What's going to happen? You're going to have tears in your eyes. Same violin, different player. We are in the image and likeness of Creator, of Spirit. Our essential nature is divine. And how we show up in the world depends on which thoughts are playing the violin, which thoughts are playing our body, our actions out here. And part of our wonderfulness, if you will, is that we have been created with free will and amazing creativity of our own. And we just go nuts sometimes with that. We can, in that freedom, create thought forms and experiences that are contrary to love, that are contrary to good, that are contrary to our best interest. We can do that. We're allowed to do that. And I'm going to speak about that next Sunday as we talk about the inherent creativity, finding comfort in our creativity and the power of our words. But we can create those things that are not good for us, but that does not mean that our essential nature has changed one bit. Now again, this is something that we can talk about. We have it intellectually very clear in our minds, but not always in our hearts. That we began every human existence with that essential nature of divinity. And we look out into the world and we see people out there and you think, gosh, I don't see much divinity there. Well, people do we do in our creativity, in our free will, we do a really good job of disguising our divinity and hiding the spirit that is in us out of ignorance and what we call in metaphysics error thought. But if we allow those thoughts, those human thoughts, to drive our being, then it's going to show up in ways that aren't very pretty, aren't very healthy, aren't very life-affirming. But that does not change one whit your essential nature as divine. It doesn't. That's hard to swallow sometimes, especially when we're hurt by some of those crazy actions that go on out in the world. But that truth is, your essential nature is divine, and your behavior does not change that truth. And when we really realize that, and when we recognize that, and we affirm that, and we hold to that, and we live from that, it is life-changing and it is world-changing when we recognize that. I want to mention 4 characteristics that come from this reality of having a divine nature. Now, when I was doing research for this, I looked up, I went to my friend Google, who knows so much, and looked for self-esteem. Thought that'd be a good place to start to get some information. And I found one article that had, and there were millions of articles there, so I didn't look at all of them, but a bunch of them. But I found that there were two characteristics of someone with high and healthy self-esteem. Then I found 3 characteristics, and 4 characteristics, and 5 characteristics, and 6 characteristics. The most I found was one article with 25 characteristics of high or healthy self-esteem. Now, number 1 is, I'm not going to give you all 25, okay? Just 4. I went back and looked at it from a spiritual perspective, and just 4 of these that are a result of our inherent nature as divine. And the first one is awakefulness. We have this amazing capacity to wake up, to recognize, to realize the truth that is around us. You know, one of the most rewarding moments I have as a minister, as a preacher, and as a teacher is when I'm preaching or teaching and I see somebody's face and their eye goes bing, and you know that they got it. And to see somebody's face when they realize something they've never realized before, when they recognize a truth they've never seen before, or when they learn something about themselves that they did not realize before, and that light comes on, that is the most glorious feeling, glorious sense of gratification to see that happen. And we have that ability to awaken. All those things that we talked about that come from human race consciousness and from the world about looking at us in such degrading sorts of ways, that comes from being asleep. But we all have the capability of waking up because that's what's in us. The truth is in us. And there are things that happen out in the world, and there are certain words that these profound speakers speak sometimes that resonate within you. You missed that one, didn't you? Okay. You hear words, you read a book. I heard so many people saying after watching the Ram Dass movie the other night about how inspiring that was, those words that they heard. Well, the only way you can be inspired is if that is in you already. It resonates with what is already there. And we have that capability of waking up to truth about the world and waking up to truth about other people and waking up to the truth about ourselves. And we have that capability because our essential nature is divine. A second characteristic is being awareful. Being able to look at the world and understand it better or differently. Let me give you an illustration. How many of you like putting together jigsaw puzzles? Oh, not as many as I thought. I love jigsaw puzzles. I mean, the more pieces, the better. All right. So you sit down and you have a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, all right? You lay it out on a card table and you turn every piece over so it's facing up correctly and arrange them and you start kind of getting colors in the same place and edge pieces and that sort of. Yes, it's wonderful. And you can look at that puzzle and say, here are 1,000 individual pieces. And this one, look at this one, has a half a horse on it. Isn't that interesting? And you put it down and here's a piece of just pure sky. How about that? All 1,000 pieces are just wonderful. But what awareness allows us to do is to say, wait a minute, there's a half a horse and here's half a horse, and we put them together. And we begin to see that these aren't 1,000 individual pieces of a puzzle. These are 1,000 interrelated pieces. And they all are connected. Some of them connected directly, but all of them are connected indirectly, because when that puzzle comes together, every piece is connected to the other, and every piece is important. To illustrate how important, how many of you ever got to the end of the puzzle and one piece was missing? Is that not infuriating? That just proves how interrelated every piece is. That's awareness that allows us to do that. So when we awaken to a truth about the world, we look at the world and we say, wow, this person is connected with this person, and this event is connected with this event. And we begin to see that interconnectedness of all things that makes such a difference in how we live. I'm excited about next week. We have our SEE week, spiritual and education and enrichment. I'll keep wanting to say enlightenment. SEE. Call it what you will. I'm teaching Metaphysics 4. I'm excited about that. I love teaching metaphysics. I enjoy it. But one of the things I always tell my metaphysical students is to realize that there are all these terms that we're going to be learning and learning definitions and getting it right and everything, and you get real uptight about that sort of thing. When I was in ministerial school, we had a condition that we talked about called metaphysical constipation. And that's where all of these terms and all this information gets stuffed into your head and you don't know what to do with it. Well, what happens after a while is that you realize this term is the same as this term when you really get down to it. So they're the same thing. And this one are the same, and this one are the same. So you realize in that moment that instead of having 6 ideas, you've got 2 ideas, and then you realize those 2 ideas go together too, so you got 1. That's that sense of awareness where things are interconnected and you begin to see how things fit together where they didn't before. And that happens because our essential nature is divine. That means you respond. Divine, right? There's another characteristic that we find, and that is of compassion. Because our essential nature is divine, we are capable of incredible compassion. Now, the word compassion means to feel with, or to feel alongside of, and to care. And we have that capability of looking at someone, and anybody can look out into the world and say, oh, poor thing, look at what a horrible time they're having, what a horrible experience that is, poor thing, and then walk away and never think about it again. That's not compassion. That's sympathy, but it's not compassion. Compassion means we see what is there and we care. Now, that doesn't mean you get immersed in it. It doesn't mean you lose yourself in it. It doesn't mean you pick it up and carry it around with you, but it means that in that moment of interconnectedness, that you care about what's going on in the world and you hold a thought that is healing toward that situation. We have an immense capacity for compassion. And of all people around, New Thought people ought to be leading in the world with compassion because we can. Because our essential nature is divine. One more. Wait for it. Yes. I had 3 others that I was going to do there, so I'm going to narrow it down to one. And that is confidence. Because our essential nature is divine, we can have confidence in living. Now let's go back and look again. Divine order, it is there. It's not going to change. We can depend on it. Gravity stays the same. The laws of physics, the laws of thermodynamics, all of those things, the laws of motion, all of those things stay the same. So we can depend on that. We have confidence in that. And we know that because of the nature of creation, we are one with that divine order. Divine order doesn't dictate what we do. Divine order supports us in our choosing and our manifesting and our creating. We have confidence because of that. And we know also that if those things are true, then the fact that our essential nature is divine is also true. So how could we not be confident about being in these human forms, in this human experience, in this human place right here, right now? Because of those things. When those things sink from your head to your heart, they become immensely powerful. I've told you the story several times, I know, of when I was getting ready to apply for ministerial school at Unity. I had to go to Unity Village to take some classes. And I was coming home from that. And right around Mount Vernon, Illinois, there was this long stretch of interstate that had pine trees on both sides. It was almost like going through a tunnel. And I looked up and the sun was setting behind me and the moon was rising in front of me. And in that moment, I don't know who was driving my car, but in that moment, I was just completely transformed in the experience that was there. And in that moment of mysticism, this phrase that I heard over and over and over at Unity Village, I am a spiritual being having a human experience that I had in my head. I could recite it to you, and I'd heard it over and over. In that moment of openness and connection with whatever that beauty was, that spiritual presence, that phrase dropped from my head into my heart, and it became real. It became real, and that changed everything. You mean I'm a spiritual being before I try to be? You mean I'm a spiritual being before I get good at it? You mean I'm a spiritual being even though I say 4-letter words still sometimes? Yes. I'm a spiritual being having the human experience, which means that I don't have to work for my spiritual beingness. I don't have to protect it. I don't have to guard it. It's there. And I can live from that place. That's the confidence that we can have because my essential nature is divine. So we find ourselves in this place of exciting possibility because of who we are. And we're not done yet. Next week I'll be talking about the power of your thought, the power of your words. It's amazing. But I'd like to close with the affirmation for this month, which is the Christ presence is my guide, my strength, and my comfort. You've heard the phrase divine idea. The divine idea and the Christ presence are, guess what? The same thing. So when you see Christ presence, you think divine idea. The Christ presence is my guide, my strength, and my comfort. The Christ presence is my guide, my strength, and my comfort. You're just full of spiritual truth. You are just full to overflowing with divinity. And I honor that, and I bless your awareness of it. God bless you.
And one of the laws that we can rely on is the law of giving and receiving. You know that as you give smiles, you receive a smile. As you give love, you get love back somewhere. We don't always reap from the field that we sow in, so to speak. We just give, and know that our life is rewarded in so many ways. So one of the ways of giving we rely on are your financial gifts and your gifts of service. So now is the time to share what you have to support Unity of Pompano. I checked on with our bookkeeper. Amazon Smile so far has brought us $160. Now that isn't a whole lot, but that's because so many of us shop and we don't think to go to smile.amazon.com. And my computer does it automatically now. So some of you that haven't done it yet, jot down the instructions so I can share it properly here. But when you go to Amazon, they have an area where you can choose Unity Church of Pompano Beach as your charity. And then Amazon gives a small percentage to that charity. And there's a number of them there, but we are there. So it's a way that you can give that doesn't cost you a thing and benefits us. I do know that if you're just at Amazon.com and you load up your shopping cart, and then you go back and you come in through smile.amazon.com, the cart is still there. So it's smile.amazon.com. And now, knowing that there's stuff beyond shopping, we focus on our gifts. We focus on what each of us has to give. And first of all, we thank you for your attendance, and we thank you for what you shared today. Let's bless it together. With a grateful heart, I acknowledge God as source of all that is. Today, I let go of any concern of lack and allow good to unfold in my life. Good is mine. Good and more good is mine. And ever increasing good is mine. Everywhere I go, I see this good. I feel it, I experience it, I freely give it, and it multiplies itself around me, and so it is. Amen.
Go to the inside.
This is the music of Sue Riley.
And so we get to another end of a celebration service, and we hope you'll take advantage of some prayer time with each of our chaplains. We have Radiance and Nick and Olga. Over here is Catherine and Nancy and Cynthia. They're happy to share some prayer time with you and enjoy fellowship time in Fellowship Hall, socializing and snacking. And all of our volunteers for our week of classes coming up are reminded to get with us to do our setup for class time. So let's stand now as we bless each other with our prayer for protection. Together, the light of God surrounds us. We are the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. We are the love of God. The power of God protects us. We are the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. We are the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as creator, family all the way. Let us walk with each other, perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, this be my joyous vow. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. God bless everyone. Have a great week.